Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another whiteboard session. This is the Nakshatra Gurukul series that I've started on my YouTube channel. Now, Nakshatra Gurukul is a refreshing, thought-provoking series of interviews that I do with researchers, scholars, students of Nakshatras who come and present their original findings and teach us new ways of understanding and mastering the divine secrets of these lunar mansions. Now, my guest today is Eve Mendoza, and she studied nakshatras on a course that I taught about a year ago. And what I have to tell about Eve is she was one of the most hardworking students that I've had, and she has done almost all the coursework that I've given her, and I always long to read her coursework because they're so very profound, they're so very well researched. So, please help me welcome Eve. Welcome, Eve.
Hi, Dr. Arjun Paiji. Thank you so much for the flattering introductory. I'm so happy and honored to be here.
It's great to have you here, Eve. I know you've never done any YouTube videos, and you are apprehensive about coming on and doing this video, but I think there is a lot of knowledge that you have, and I was keen that you come and share this knowledge with our viewers here. And also, I think maybe it's best that we could start by you telling us, for how long you've been doing Vedic astrology, what got you interested in Vedic astrology, and your journey. Can you just tell our viewers about yourself?
Of course, I would be happy to. So, first of all, I just want to bow to the knowledge within you. And I really have to honor what you're sharing with all of us, even though, as the listeners are about to hear, I've been studying for over 20 years. And so your class was very refreshing to me. I literally learned new things, which I'm not used to, without how much research I've done. So I wanted to express gratitude for that first.
Okay.
But I have been, like I just said, I've been studying for over 20 years. I stumbled on astrology at a very young age. And it was Western astrology because that was all that was available here in America. But very quickly, I realized that there was Vedic astrology just through friends or through this or that, just talking to people. And I became fixated. I started teaching myself mantras to Lord Shiva.
Wow.
I was teaching myself Sanskrit. Even in school, I teach myself classical Greek. So I always had this interest in codes and languages. So astrology was just kind of a natural flow. And once I found Jyotish, it just became such a natural part of my life. And so a group of friends were going to India shortly after I started learning Jyotish. And I ended up staying. I just kind of went, just wondering what it was like. And I was the one that ended up staying. And I really just permanently returned in 2010. I mean, I had to come back to renew my visa and,
Right.
Those kinds of headaches and attend to duties here in the U.S. But I was pretty much solidly there from God, 96 was my first trip, and then I lived there from 2001 onward. So.
Oh, wow! So you lived
Yes.
in India for probably more time than that. I have stayed in India since 1996. I was away for 10 years. I was out of it. So.
All right. Well, I feel that I was very fortunate. I felt very much at home as soon as I got off the plane. Even though I look like this, I got off the plane and I was in tears. I couldn't explain it. Everyone else was, in shock. And I just felt, like I was home. And so I just continued the study of Jyotish over the years, and at depth, it got deeper and deeper. I wasn't really allowed to learn any intellectual techniques until I learned the mantras and the sadhanas for each graha. So everything for me has been devotion first, and the learning of the intellectual side of it afterwards. Now, both are equally important, of course. I'm not devaluing one over the other, but you cannot know Jyotish. You cannot know any sacred science without applying the devotion of the heart.
I think that's a very, very important thing that you've said, Eve, because many of us today just want to go to the knowledge without sparing time for the devotion which is required. I'm very glad. And was there a guru under whose tutelage you were actually mentored?
He would never call himself a guru.
Right.
And I would still feel so badly to even bring him into that, but absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely, this person without a doubt. And I've just remained very hidden, I've remained very hidden the whole time. He, was at a charitable trust. And it was very, very natural, very simple. I would say that even most of the training was spiritual.
Right.
And Jyotish came second because you can't, if you don't have your spiritual integrity in line. And this is even where I could even get into our subject, which is the Bhadrapadas. Because if you don't have your spine in line, if you don't have your spiritual center in line, you should not learn spiritual subjects. Beautiful. It will become very destructive because it means that you will not have a moral code. You will not have the structure in which to proceed, the foundation. And that's what these Bhadrapadas are all about. So should we?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should start talking about the Bhadrapadas. And before we get started with Eve, I would like to just add something. The Bhadrapadas are one of the most important nakshatras that I've come across. And studying them has always been very mystical and mysterious. And in my research and in my study, I found especially these two nakshatras very difficult to interpret and to understand, because there is a lot of element of mysticism because of the deities who are associated with these nakshatras. And also there is very little information that you can get from books or from ancient scriptures. So this has always been a very difficult pair of nakshatras for me, and it took me a lot of time to really understand them. But I'm glad that Eve has spent considerable amount of time. I think she's been meditating on these nakshatras for quite some time. So I really want to have Eve unravel those secrets, unveil those secrets that are behind these Bhadrapadas. So Eve, what do you know?
Thank you. Actually, I would like to encourage any viewers to watch your two sessions on the stellar mind programming, the Porva and Uttara Bhadrapada. I found them very profound because you gave a lot of little concrete things for someone to meditate upon. And they're not going to understand any nakshatra without meditation. Yeah. You can say, oh, the personality's like that. And that's what we like to do in the West. We're so psychological. But we forget the foundation is always spirit. So I would love to encourage people to watch your videos for the foundation of this. And then before we begin today, I would like to ask the help of Lord Shiva for all of us to integrate intuitively and directly what the Bhadrapadas are and to pay proper respect to them. So I'll start with a mantra, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. Om Ganganapate Namaha. Om Aim Saraswate Namaha. Om Namaste Astu Bhagavan Vishweshwaraya Mahadevaya Trimbakaya Tripurandakaya Trikalagnikalaya Kalagnirudraya Nilakantaya Mrityunjayaya Saraveshwaraya Sadashivaya Sriman Mahadevaya Namaha. Okay. So first thing I want to start out here is just with the imagery, because we're, Porva Bhadrapada being the first one of the Bhadrapadas, We see here, a form. This is commonly, this is more South Indian, correct?
Yeah.
This imagery. And so you see the 1 foot, the foundational 1 foot, and you see the Trimurti, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva in the middle, and Lord Vishnu coming out. And so you see the Godhead here. And you see also in Lord Shiva's Trishul, you see the same thing. You see the 1 foundation and you see the 3 branches, right? Okay, and so with Porva Bhadrapada, you're going to see a lot of references to the pillar, to the upward moving energy. And so let's just kind of tie these in. And here we have an image of Lord Shiva. It looks rather benevolent, but that's deceptive. So this is the story of him burning Kamadev to ash. So
Eve, have you moved to the next slide? Because
yes,
here in my thing, we're still on the first slide.
Okay, maybe did it freeze? Can you see my face moving?
Yeah, now I can. Now I can. Yeah.
Oh, you can see the next slide. Okay,
yeah,
wonderful. No. Wonderful. So we see Lord Shiva. Sometimes they say he's sitting under the mango tree, which is oddly enough Porva Bhadrapada's tree. Here he opens his eye on Kamadev and reduces him to ash. So he reduces desire to ash, completely obliterates desire. And this is a major motivation in Porva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. So I'm just going to kind of start with these little pointers that I've written down. Anyone's welcome to take a screenshot. I'm open to any questions that anyone may have about these little points here. This is basically just to keep me in line. But you'll see a lot of connection between, of course, the Bhadrapadas, just like the Falgunis, the Ashadas, right? So you'll see a lot of connection here. Now, Porva Bhadrapada is always geared on elevation. It's always geared on that upward, just like a fire moves upward. And there's even references to Porva Bhadrapada having connections to Agni, being a spiritual form of Agni, right? And even the 2 heads. There's a reference to the 2 heads, just like Agni, and then there's the goat as well. There's even some people who say that Porva Bhadrapada is the Vahana of Agni. That's so right. I've heard that as well. So there is definitely a link there, but it's the spiritual fire. It's a very different thing. It's the upward moving force of the Kundalini, and it is geared at destroying. The past life bondage. Okay, so here you can potentially get a very volatile energy if a person is dealing with this upward moving force and they don't know where to channel it. They don't have, once again, and I think you brought up a very good point about this with foundation, if they don't have a solid foundation. So you had mentioned earlier checking the chairs in their home. If anyone's born under Porva Bhadra, Uttara Bhadrapada, checking their foundation, checking their chairs, anything that is stabilizing for them. Would it also go into their floor, I wonder? Would you also say that?
I would say the same thing because, just before we went recording here, I was just discussing with Eve, saying that what I've observed, and this was an insight, because Bhadrapadas were also called as Proshtapadas. That was the ancient appellation of these nakshatras. Now, Proshtapada was a reference to the stool or a chair with the 4 feet. The padas are the 4 feet. So essentially, if your life is very volatile, then one of the things that you probably would want to check is the chair in which you sit and the ergonomics of the chair. Like Eve mentioned, that you need to have your spine straight if you want to, center your things, and you also want to channelize your the spiritual pillar of fire, which comes from the bottom. So this is what spiritually people can progress. And I have said, the chair is very important for them. And like what Eve said, even the floor, because that's the foundation. The floor in which you stand or wherever you're standing shouldn't be wobbly.
Yes, that is such a good point, because as you look more at Uttara and Porva Bhadrapada, you'll see how much they connect to Kundalini energy. And we always throw these words around, you know, especially in the West. Kundalini, I mean, you've got this, you've got that. I mean, I don't even know how much of it people really understand or seek to understand. And that's when it actually becomes dangerous. Once again, when you don't have the foundation. And foundation is humility, right? Too, the feet of the Master, the feet of the Lord are the most sacred, the most, you know, that when the head's down, and that's the foundation. So if you don't have the foundation, you should not be playing with these things once again. So Kundalini purifies the spine, the spiritual channels, and that's really what Porva Bhadrapada is seeking to do. And so whatever elevation and agitation and intensity Porva Bhadrapada creates in its upward rising motion, the next nakshatra, Uttara Bhadrapada, seeks to sustain and stabilize that. So you'll see them work together, especially if someone has both of them in their kundali. So if you see, like Paramahansa Ramakrishna has moon in Porva Bhadrapada and Shukra in Uttara Bhadrapada, Venus. So you see the working together of two benevolent energies to stabilize Shakti and the force of higher consciousness within his body. You know, he was able to maintain his body, first of all. A lot of people don't realize that during some intense spiritual realizations, you can even drop the body. There's intense penances that you can do, like these ones where you sit inside of a circle, and this all these hidden things where you literally can drop your body because it cannot sustain the electric force. Okay, so Uttara Bhadrapada is that stabilizing force. You have one that's fiery and one that is watery. So you have the fire rising from the flame. And so, you know, you also get, so I have all this penetrating force of the spiritual Kundalini energy. Okay, and so the burning of Kamdev. So Kamadeva as well. So on the spiritual path, our desires, I know, especially in the West, my Lord, we love to think we're free by fulfilling our desires. Okay, it actually creates more of a prison. And this isn't just philosophy. It's not religion. When you are a slave to your desires, you are in a prison. It might be a prison of your own making in some way, but it's still a prison. So with Porva and Uttara Bhadrapada, if someone has a prominent amount of Grahas or anything significant in these nakshatras, I would highly encourage them to seek to gain some kind of stability and control of the force of desire within their life, because that really can throw them, even intellectual desires. I'm not only referring to sensual desires. As a matter of fact, a lot of Porva Bhadrapada people will be seeking for spirituality. They'll be trying to meditate. They'll be trying to do mantras. They'll be trying to do all this stuff. They're seeking for something other than this world, and they can get quite depressed and exasperated about it. So one secret behind that is to check their foundation. Check what their spiritual foundation is built on and what desires are still motivating their life, because they literally have to become like Lord Shiva. They have to have, there's a prayer to have the concentration of Lord Shiva, right? And so it's just this.
Do you want to share that prayer?
Yes, I wish I remembered it. It's in his Sahasranama, actually.
Okay.
So you'll see that, no, actually it's not, but they do call him Sthirya, of course, fixed still, right? But there is, if I think of it, I will repeat it, the mantra. So there's a prayer to gain the concentration or the stillness of Lord Shiva. And this is really what Porva Bhadrapada needs to do. In some way, it needs to focalize that energy, align it, be the pillar, so that it can contain its intensity. Okay, so, and here we also have a very interesting concept too, because we have, you know, if you notice, the Trimurti activity is Brahma, right? So it's creative. And so it's that ability to create new space, create new spiritual awareness, create new openings. And then you see in Uttara Bhadrapada, you have the preserving element. You have Vishnu, once again. So to sustain what has been created, right? So, okay, so let's move on to here. And so here, now this is where I wanted to bring it into more of the cosmology as well, because as humans, we're always so self-important. You know, so we think of Kundalini energy, and we only think of our own bodies. We think of our own spiritual advancement, right?
That's right.
Which is ambition. It's more ambition if we're not recognizing everything in nature has its electromagnetic field. It has its own consciousness. You know, everything is sacred. Everything has Kundalini energy, so to speak, within it. That moving, the consciousness moving upward. Everything has that. So you see in Vedic cosmology, you'll see that there's always the foundational element. And I would encourage anyone to study these things like Srimad Bhagavatam, anything where you can see more of the cosmology. And you'll see a lot of the themes that happen in Uttara Bhadrapada and Porva Bhadrapada. You'll see the rising pillar of the higher consciousness, you know, as you see in this diagram here with all the different lokas of the devas and even higher. And you'll see that it's in the form of a pillar. And then you'll see the disc of our world, which is the foundation, which we're going to get to later, even with Uttara Bhadrapada being related to the Sudarshana chakra. So you'll see Uttara Bhadrapada moving this way, and then the Porva Bhadrapada moving upward. So within everything, within our spine, within everything in nature, we're experiencing these forces all the time. So, okay, so let me just scan here and make sure. Oh, yes, and the electric and magnetic force. So these are also very important concepts. So you have with Porva Bhadrapada, you have more of the electric, forceful, to push things away or to strike things, or, you know, like you'll hear the reference to lightning, right? And then with Uttara Bhadrapada, you'll have more of the magnetic force, the thing which draws into itself. And even the quality of this nakshatra is tamasic, right? Yeah. So it's a very different quality, even though they're very much alike. It's a different quality than Porva Bhadrapada.
And it's it was just reminds me of something which we learned in school. Is you have these coils of electric, the coils, and then you have the magnet going through the coil vertically, and then you have electricity being created. So
wow,
kind of symbolic that you have this energy of Purva Bhadrapada, like a magnet running through your spine, and then the electromagnetic waves which are created around you is through the coil. So it was sort of electromagnetic induction. That was what the concept which we learned in school. So maybe that was something which came to my mind when you're trying to explain this concept. Beautiful concept.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for adding that. That is absolutely correct. And if you look at everything in the universe, even how we reproduce as humans, you look at the lingam and the yoni, everything, it's always an embrace. It's always an embrace. And you cannot grow without it.
Beautiful.
So so here we have, the Yajamana Udyamana Shakti. And this is, meditating on Porva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. If anyone's done it, Dr. Arjun Paiji, I'm sure you have. And it's a very intense energy. And I've had some of the most intense experiences with containing fire in my body through those moon meditations. Or, I don't want to get into it here, but one thing I believe that some experiences are very private and they're not supposed to exit the mouth. And that's a good lesson for Porva Bhadrapada, by the way, is containing energy through less speaking. If they're agitated or whatever it may be, to channel it into something else. But so to maintain some privacy around this, some of my experiences with this nakshatra has been very intense. It's the only word I know for it. And this Yajamana, Udyamana, Shakti really does come through, meaning that it is the spiritual fire there to burn that which you no longer need. And that is where you get the funeral cot, you know, the stars. So you get the burning bodies of the gods, right? The shmashan. And you hear, this is where this energy can easily get convoluted in our society. And I'd really like to address this here, because everything you're going to read here, it's all about the radiance of spiritual knowledge. Now, one thing we have to understand is that our ancient ancestors had a very different moral code than we have today. You did not give your word, and you had to do it. If you gave your word, you had to do it. You never came to a teacher with arrogance. Even if someone else's teacher, the amount of arrogance that we put into our children now, the amount of that what we're doing in this society is breeding a different kind of person. So when you read these ancient texts and you see that Porva Bhadrapada is, it's got the power of the spiritual fire, and you see that, it is connected with the radiance of spiritual knowledge. In our society, we have a very hard time digesting that. We are not programmed from birth to hold that fire. And so people born under this nakshatra often have a very hard time balancing their energy. Okay, so this is where, and this is a tricky subject here, but it's, you can look at the basis above and the basis below. You can get great humanitarians. You can get people who really change the world. A lot of power in this nakshatra, and great yogis, very, very great yogis, tapasyas, like severe, severe yogis. And it's an Ugra nakshatra, of course. It's fierce, right? So what are our ancient ancestors telling us by this? And what is, I have to bow to India here, sincerely, that this knowledge has been maintained, because other places in the world, it's been completely obliterated. But the ancient people of India, they were telling you here that, this is an Ugra nakshatra, which means fierce. They're telling you that the spiritual evolution, the spiritual life, is not for the weak-minded. It's not for a desire-ridden personality. It's not for someone without the structure or the foundation of a moral code in many cases. Those people can wreak great havoc on other people if they gain power. And you see numerous stories like that, where someone wasn't really ready to contain that, and then it turns into a whole ordeal. So, our ancient people knew that spiritual evolution was a matter of death. It was a matter of confronting the death of the ego. And it means our own death. It doesn't mean the death of others. There is a side of Porva Bhadrapada that can be very fierce or severe on other people. Okay, so, and that is just a quality of it that I've witnessed in my work. I have very close friends that are Porva Bhadrapada that are not like that, and that are very self-reflective. And I find that this nakshatra does best when it's self-reflective, when it doesn't turn that fire on other people. So it just needs to find a way to hold that in silence and still get the intensity out. And a lot of that intensity can be put into finding their foundation in their own spiritual moral code. Because that's really, we are not given that foundation in this culture. And in any society almost, even in India, everyone's struggling to keep it, or lose it, as fast as they can. So it's one of those things where this nakshatra has to be understood properly, because even though it represents that radiance, we are not given the foundation at birth, usually. So let me go. So here, I just wanted to speak a little bit about the symbology. So we've got the male lion as the yoni. We've got the mango tree as the tree. And here's a picture of Lord Narasimha. the incarnation of Lord Vishnu in a very fierce protective form to protect Prahlad, right? So he comes out of a pillar. And this was just an interesting observation. I don't know, just the fact of the male lion being the yoni and the fact of the pillar and the Lord coming out of the pillar in a ferocious way. And in some way, you know, the demonic, you could call it that. I really don't like that word, but the darkened, ignorant side of the mind does have to be devoured. It does have to be devoured. There is something to throwing oneself on the funeral pyre. And it's an internal, private thing. So Porva Bhadrapada is all about that. Okay, so Dr. Arjun Pai, do you have any questions? Because I feel like I'm running my mouth.
No, I think this was a very, very profound insight that you shared with us, with the association with the Lord Narasimha and him coming out of the pillar. I think that was a beautiful and very profound insight. And with the male lion. Is it a male lion? Yeah.
It is a male lion, yes. Yeah. And if you look at male lions in the wild, they are the protectors of their territory.
That's right.
So they go around and they protect, and they can also break an animal's back with one bite.
Yeah.
Their jaws are so powerful. So this is that acknowledgement of the power of destruction that is in this nakshatra.
And what I liked about your discussion, Eve, today is you have very beautifully put the energies of this nakshatra, Purva Bhadrapada. I don't think any of us would have been able to put a spiritual bent on, you read any books, you always get this nakshatra being vilified all the time. So, but you have beautifully encapsulated, and you try to put that, how people can use these energies. So can you tell us more about how can people use these energies and not let the fierceness or the sharpness of this Ugra native, rather than it coming out, how can they actually manifest that spiritually or for the benefit of humanity? Can you just give us some pointers?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, things I've observed with this nakshatra is it's very interesting, because sometimes they really will not want to have a guru. I've noticed a fierce independence or a summarizing of gurus. Like they're quick to find, what the fault is. When they do follow someone, however, they'll be very devoted. So that might be some way that they're protecting themselves. So I don't want to discourage their discrimination. Because Lord Shiva, you get Vivekananda, right? Swami Vivekananda, he constantly questioned Paramahansa Ramakrishna, and Paramahansa Ramakrishna didn't care. He just let him do this. Vivekananda didn't have Porva Bhadrapada. That's not why I'm bringing him up, but I'm only saying that Vivek has a place. It has a place. You need discrimination. I think Porva Bhadrapada can have great discrimination. But it has to be very careful to not become critical, judgmental, fixed. It's got a very secretive side. Okay, very, very secretive side. That once again, there is a need for privacy in the spiritual life. And I actually think that's why this nakshatra is so secretive in some way. It has one side of itself that is always concealed. One side is visible and the other side is concealed. It's like two faces. And I really do think it's the functioning of the spiritual energy, because we are not supposed to run our mouths about our relationship with the beloved. It's just like telling what happened with your wife last night. It's that defiling in a way to spirit, especially when you're uniting with that force. It's the most pure, most elevated force. So I think Porva Bhadrapada people can learn to have more positive forms of secrecy. I've also seen a lot of misunderstanding of Tantra. Okay, so I've seen things that borderline on black magic, even when people don't know that it does. So here we get into the subject of binding and bonding. And I had just talked about this with someone, actually, oddly enough. So with binding, we seek to control. We seek to, we do this mantra so that we can get this or we can get that. Okay, so that's a self-oriented form of it's okay. There's some harmless forms of that, right? But then there's the highest form, which Porva Bhadrapada people are really looking for deep inside. They're actually looking for the highest, and they'll dismiss everything else too quickly without realizing that they just need to center themselves and keep quiet and observe. Like a lion, if a lion wouldn't live if it didn't pounce on its prey, if it didn't sneak up on it. So there's something in this nakshatra that's supposed to use that secrecy and that ability to be silent in one way to contain this energy. They should not be buying into incessant desires. They get very agitated by this, by seeking ravenous type desires. Their minds get very agitated. They can get over intellectualized. They're the ones that will challenge you, for no reason. It's just the attack, and it's because something in them, I think your point was the most profound. They've lost their foundation. So they've lost their ability to observe from the silent space. And that's really where they should be observing. So desires tend to throw them all over the place. Remember the goal of this nakshatra, the Purushartha, right, is Artha. So it's the preservation of culture, and it's not kama, which we do find in Uttara Bhadrapada, which I'll talk about. So, but this nakshatra gets agitated by the incessant seeking of desires, and that includes intellectual gymnastics. So they really need to cool their heads. They need to cool their heads. They need to cool their feet. Honestly, like some kind of cooling oil on the bottom of their feet and on the top of their head. They need to be connected to the magnetic current of the earth, taking off their shoes and going and walking on the earth without the shoes, right? So I hope this was helpful.
Oh, this was beautiful. I think some of the, I would say to all my viewers, these are some very, very important things that she has talked about. Eve, thank you very much, because this is a very, very important nakshatra, and you've given us so much of, insights and very valuable insights which people can follow. So I'm very glad that you did this. And another thing that I wanted to, another observation, maybe we need to study and research this more, Eve, is Purva Bhadrapada. In a sense, I feel that people who have prominent Purva Bhadrapadas, who become spiritual masters, might have students who might be extremely popular or would become very famous. Now,
I've seen this.
Why I came to this is two things, and just by looking at your presentation, is one, it reminded me of Narasimha and Prahlad. Prahlad was his most devoted.
Yes.
Okay, so that was one insight. Another one was Ramakrishna Paramhamsa and Vivekananda. When you mentioned that, I thought maybe, and that is why it is very important that if your guru is Purva Bhadrapada, he has all the right knowledge he's giving you, because you're going to be his very devoted students, and you would just, those preachings are going to go. So what type of preachings come from those masters? Again, you have to be extremely, because it can lie on both sides. As you said, there is a very dark side, and then there is a very wide open, side. So this is something that I would like to share, and we need to observe this. Unless you have any observations you would like to share with us with your 20 years.
No, you're absolutely right. I've seen that quite a few times. As a matter of fact, a few of my Porva Bhadrapada clients that are practicing yogis, they are very sincere. They're some of my more sincere people that I know even in my life. Over 20 years, I've seen that when people born in this nakshatra apply that energy, now they will be doubtful. They will challenge their guru, or they will they even if it's silent, because they don't always expose that. They don't always like to expose that. They'll come and pounce on someone, So, but some of them, I can sincerely say, they're some of the most devoted people, most sincere, and I would even say insightful people. There's a deep level of intelligence at work in this nakshatra, and a great desire to bring human and godlike nature together and to benefit the world. And that's really what that Shakti is about.
Yeah. Yajamana Udayamana.
Yes, bringing those worlds together and benefiting humanity and actually becoming a foundation for humanity. So you can really get true gurus with this nakshatra. Right. There was another gentleman that I knew that was connected with my teacher who no one understood him. He built his ashram near a shmashan. He didn't do anything traditional, but this was a very sincere person. And so he only collected a very few core. Yeah, these are not the showy people. Yeah, these are not the showy. It's the very intimate, very sincere, because it's, once again, it's all about the death of the ego.
Absolutely.
So yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So should we move to
yes.
Uttara Bhadrapada?
Yes, Eve, okay. Please.
Okay. So here I might just say the mantra to Lord Vishnu.
Sure.
Even though I'd like to hold in focus that we're still dealing with one of the 11 Rudras. But there is a connection to Lord Vishnu here. So, Om Shantakaram Bhujagashayanam Padmanabham Suresham Vishwatharam Gagana Sadrusham Megavaranam Shubhangam Lakshmi Kantam Kamalanayanam Yogi Virgyanagamyam Vande Vishnu Bhavapayaharam Sarvaloke Ekanatham. So here we find many references that if you study Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra, you'll find many references to qualities of Lord Vishnu. Okay, so even in this mantra, you see the mentioning of the rain cloud, you see the mentioning of the lotus, of the serpent, so Ahi comes in again, just like in Ashlesha. We have Ahi, but we also have Ananta Shesha that comes in here. And you see Lakshmi, who, a lot of people, if they have Uttara Bhadrapada, like a woman in her chart, then they'll say she'll be like Goddess Lakshmi. And so here you see the connection with yogis also, the contemplation of yogis on the Lord Vishnu. So Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra is also a sign of yogis. And it's also a very sincere sign. But it has a very different quality because here, so with Porva Bhadrapada, we have that severe upward moving force where they actually need to cool themselves off. With Uttara Bhadrapada, sometimes they need to get moving more. Because here we have the cow, right? Here we have the cow. So there, the yoni is a cow. So we have more of a relaxed kind of energy here. However, I have seen the same quality of intensity because after all, this is an atmospheric sign. Once again, just like Porva Bhadrapada, they're both atmospheric. And here we're dealing with some deep secrets as well. Okay, so Varshodhya Mana Shakti, the power to bring rain. Now, I'm interested in this, and I've contemplated this again because they're clearly not talking about only physical rain, because it's the result of the basis above and below is stability for the three worlds. It doesn't say for one world. It doesn't say for our material world. It's the stability of three worlds. So this is where we get into very deep esoteric meaning again with both of these nakshatras. So this is a very, I have a feeling it's very esoteric. I haven't quite figured out how to put it into words, but I do know in some of the old Sufi poetry, like in some things in Urdu, right? Mm-hmm. So where you have Hindi and Farsi coming together, and some of the old, I even believe Kabir, some of the old Kabiri poems, there's a mention of rain as a result of tapasya. Like you have as a result of divine union, and there'll be, all of a sudden rain comes down, and it's like the blessing upon the devotee. So there's something very deep here, and I wouldn't overlook it to just go, oh, it's rain for the crops. No, That's, and who, you may have to remind me of this gentleman's name, but the great yogi, the great Rishi who brought Ganga to earth. So you have, I cannot remember his name at the moment, but
Bhagirath?
Yes, Bhagirath. So you have these great people of the past, these great people who brought big water, these rivers to the earth, to the point where Lord Shiva has to wrap her in his hair because her pride is out of control because the river knows nothing but to go, So here we have that pouring down of grace, of punya, of merit, right? From the previous nakshatra, Porva Bhadrapada, if those energies are used right. So here we reap the results of the Kundalini coming up the spine and the grace descending, the Sahasra chakra. Of course, this, even with the whole, I was telling you earlier about Mother Lakshmi, Goddess Lakshmi, with the offering the 1,000 fiery lotuses.
Lotuses, correct. Yes,
and if you think about 1,000 petals, and Lord Shiva shows up in the name Sahasra, which is 1,000. So this is all. And who is Lakshmi? We call her the goddess of wealth, but it's kind of disrespectful because she is the wealth of devotion. She's always seen at her Lord's feet. She doesn't care for wealth. That's not what she's about. She cares about her Lord's happiness. So she is the embodiment of divine love. And so when we have love for the beloved, we no longer seek the selfish desire, right? So Uttara Bhadrapada has a lot to do with transcending self. And this is where this nakshatra can be misunderstood as well, because once again, we do not have a society that helps us understand that foundation. So here we have the raining clouds and the growth of plants. And we have the result, which is the stability of the three worlds. So we have the merit of the great tapasyas being the foundation of the three worlds. The great rishis, these great people who have laid this foundation for all of us. And this is a fixed nakshatra,
Stira,
right? Yeah, stira or dhruv. So it's fixed. And you can really see the qualities of that in this nakshatra. It's a little different than Porva Bhadrapada being Ugra. This does tend to be more mild. However, once again, you can see the fierce, very sensitive, emotional people. They can get deeply wounded emotionally, I find. So they really do need to find what their foundation is emotionally. That's very important. Where to apply their devotion becomes very important, because they won't care about intellectual gymnastics the way that Porva Bhadrapada will. So they'll be more centered below the head. They'll be more centered in their body in some way. So here, this is a very interesting point that I shared with you earlier. And I would encourage anyone watching to investigate more about this, because here we have the Ahir Bundya Samhita, which that's, as you know, the deity or the god of Uttara Bhadrapada. Arjun Paiji, do you need to go? Are we okay on time?
No, we're perfectly okay. I'm just sitting. No, don't worry about it.
Okay.
There's no.
Okay.
So please take your time. Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Please let me know.
No.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay. So
I'm just changing my position. That's it, to make myself comfortable. Just like the Ahir Budnya, trying to make lazy and comfortable.
Find your foundation.
Yeah, finding my foundation. That's right.
So in this Samhita, we read about the mysteries of Lord Vishnu's Sudarshana Chakra. And I loved what you had mentioned in your Uttara Bhadrapada talk about the warrior star. Because here you find the weapon of Lord Vishnu, which I would love you to reiterate the point that you had brought up to me when we discussed this about the Pralaya.
Yeah. So, we were just discussing this before we started recording this session. And when she talked about Sudarshan Chakra, what came to my mind was, Sudarshan Chakra is kind of signifying the pralaya. Pralaya is a concept where we believe that whenever the world is going to come to an end, then the water bodies will rise and they'll spiral the entire world and all the land mass would be submerged. So that is Shiva's nature of destroying everything. So the Sudarshan Chakra and the spiral is very symbolic, and using the water element here where Ahirbudnya is to take, all of these creation into, like a spiral, like the Sudarshan Chakra. So, take it below. That is Pralaya. So that was something that came to my mind. That's thought.
That's so profound, because I really do believe there is something, because when you look at magical principle or any kind of sadhana or anything from any other culture that is magic based, you'll see that there's counterclockwise and clockwise motion. And so, right? So you always go around the Navgrahas, correct? You go around them 9 times clockwise, right? So if you counterclockwise becomes destructive.
Absolutely.
So there is something, once again, here we have that upward moving energy in the spiral once again. And when it's moving clockwise, we have preservation and we have creative energy. And when it's moving counterclockwise, we have absolute dissolution. So definitely Porva Bhadrapada and Uttara Bhadrapada do deal with that counterclockwise energy too. So that's kind of, in a way, a life purpose for them to unwind their sanskars.
Beautiful.
To unleash, to remove that sticky quality of the sanskars and the ego identity on the pure reflective surface of the mind. Right? So Uttara Bhadrapada provides that wheel, that motion, and that weapon. that weapon. And we find here too, we have Ananta Shesh. We have Ananta Sheshnag, which is the foundation of, once again, Lord Vishnu, a foundation for the divine consciousness, foundation of the whole world. So there's many interesting connections here. And what I also love to mention is that when you read about Lord Vishnu's Sudarshana Chakra, you also see that this is the manifestation of his Kriya Shakti. So for those practicing Kriya Yoga, or this becomes very significant because you have, of course, the knots, right? In each one of the centers, you have the knots to unleash. And understanding Porva and Uttara Bhadrapada that's very important. So you get this Kriya Shakti, which is the Lord in his activity. When he's in movement, when he's in motion, the divine consciousness is actually moving and not resting. So that is a key for Uttara Bhadrapada, though, is to get themselves moving in some way, because they can be real dreamers. Remember, the motivation for this nakshatra is kama. And kama is hopes, aspirations, dreams. There's a very hopeless romantic quality to this nakshatra sometimes, so there can be. I've seen it many times. So especially if Shukra is there and there's other forces that reinforce that. So this is a call to action, or to invoke the Lord within to move you spiritually, so that you can actually have experience of that union within instead of seeking it outward. And to not just be a daydreamer, you can take action on those energies. Being a daydreamer is not so bad either, but it can definitely hold you back. But very inventive people, they have great imagination sometimes, I've seen. Okay, so here we have more symbology. So we have the neem tree, which is very medicinal, a very medicinal plant. And very sacred. You'll see, I was living in Maharashtra, which you'll see many neem trees. And I can't tell you how many babas or how many yogis would be under these neem trees, because it's a very, sacred, it's a sacred place for meditation. There's a very powerful energy under the neem tree. And it's interesting because they are antiseptic, antibacterial, And so there's these properties of being able to, once again, destroy what's not needed. So here you have that back legs of the funeral cot. So we're still dealing with death and the removal of what's not needed. So, and we have the cow. And this was kind of, for me, a heartbreaking meditation in a way, because cows are very vulnerable and they don't breed quickly. And yet people are eating them. And they emotionally bond to their calf in such a way that it puts them in severe shock. And so we're eating that sadness. You know, when people eat, or that we're hurting these beings that have no ill will. They connect emotionally to life, and then we're eating them, and not only eating them but treating them terribly. So when I've meditated on this nakshatra, I've actually had very strong feelings about the treatment of cows, and it's a very heartbreaking thing, specifically in this country. You know, this is that principle once again of binding and bonding. You know, so we want to own nature. Look at the English language. It's really disgusting. I mean, I'm sorry. I want to respect my ancestors, and I do. But there's a side of it that I get very upset with, because it's commanding, it's controlling. We say it, we say that. We are no longer speaking of nature as personal. We have a separate word for nature instead of being part of nature. When you look at older languages like Sanskrit, or you look at like the Lakota people or any of the people, indigenous people, their language is very circular. And it was very circular, and it was very based in the natural element, and it was bonding. It was oriented towards bonding instead of binding and constricting and using something for your own benefit. So we have an epidemic of selfishness. And what's happened, I think, in Uttara and Porva Bhadrapada is people now born with these stars, you know, they're the ones that are supposed to be upholding more of the selfless element. Okay, but there's no there's not a lot available. There's a lot of false teachers. You know, who's to say who's false? I never try to get into that, but there's a lot of darkness there right now. We have a lot of people giving knowledge, too eager to give knowledge before they've sat in a cocoon and before they've sat at someone's feet, you know, and really allowed it to cook. And this is this whole thing with the fire, allowing the knowledge to cook and not letting the steam out. Beautiful. Right? So Uttara Bhadra is that spiritual sensitivity, the spiritual sensitivity that's required to understand compassion, love. I mean, it really is the foundation of your spiritual life. So, and then, of course, you see the imagery of Mother Lakshmi, who we were talking about earlier. So here I have just little final notes on Vishnu Sahasranam. And I would say for both Bhadrapadas, the worship of Lord Shiva, of course, is always very good for them. However, I really have to caution people, because there are siddhis that can be gained by these sadhanas. And if you're not tempered and you haven't brought your mind under control in some way, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, because the spiritual ego is worse than the worldly ego. So I would highly recommend, you know, if you do approach mantras and all of these things, of course, but the head has to always be down, you know. So with the Vishnu Sahasranam, you know, there are shlokas here, there are verses here, 97 through 100 for Porva Bhadrapada, and 101 through 104 for Uttara Bhadrapada. And you'll see a lot of the remedial measures, a lot of the character traits that, you know, your higher consciousness is probably hungry for if you're born under these nakshatras. You know, because we're so full of sadness and emptiness in this day and age, because we don't respect life. And that's why these nakshatras, people with these, find themselves so out of balance. They don't know what to do with their energy. So I would highly recommend studying those verses for anyone interested. And then whatever sadhana they do on their own, or, sometimes just living by living a good life, not harming others, not harming other things for your own enjoyment. And this is not, I don't mean to come off religious at all. It's about the circle of life and about just honoring other life forms. So, is there anything you'd like to add, Dr. Arjun Pai? Because I'm at the end of my slides.
Yeah. If I think there are a couple of things that I would definitely like to add on Uttara Bhadrapada.
Oh, I would love that. Yes.
Yeah. But a beautiful, beautiful session. I must say, there's so many thoughts going on in my mind when you started speaking about them, and there were so many things which were running in my mind. So maybe a couple of things that I would like to add to, in addition to what you had already spoken. Firstly, talking about Uttara Bhadrapada, what I've seen is one of the symbols of Uttara Bhadrapada is the serpent lying at the deep, oceans, at the bed of the oceans. So at the bed of the oceans, you already have the weight of the water above. So you become very lethargic. You cannot move. It's very difficult to make a movement when you're in Uttara Bhadrapada. And this is because of the water, So the deeper you go into the water, your motions become very slow. They become very, it's like a slow motion, right? So that is why it is very important for Uttara Bhadrapada natives to put that much effort to move out of their comfort zone, because at the deep of the sea, you are motionless. You're already still. So you need to bring a little bit of motion in you so that you can activate that element. Another observation that I saw is very strangely, Purva Bhadrapada is the male lion, and then you see Uttara Bhadrapada is the cow, which is, so you can see these two energies. So one is fire, another is water.
Yes.
So you see these two extreme energies operating in these Bhadrapadas, because of which it becomes very difficult for people to cope up, because the moon is, when the moon transits into a fierce form, and suddenly it is, completely water, complete.
That is amazing. Yes, that is so profound, Dr. Arjun Pai, because also if you put a lion in the room with a cow, what's going to happen? It's not going to go well.
Yeah.
So, yes, absolutely. That's very profound, because it's always a very intense meditation for me. That moon transit, I notice that it's such a shift. And here's where we get into opposites as well, like opposites in magnetism, the positive and negative. Yes, and all those currents are running through the earth. So you get the crystalline structures at the bottom of the earth with Uttara Bhadrapada, all the stagnant, still energy. And then with Porva Bhadrapada, you get more of the atmospheric, movable energy that's stormy and destructive and fierce. And it's very opposite. Wow, this is very profound. Thank you.
So
yes, very profound.
So this was something that came to my mind. And another thing which came to my mind is when I was doing this interview with Prash Trivedi, and I think Prash mentioned that we have misunderstood what Lakshmi is all about.
Yes, 100%. I would love to meet this person.
Yeah. So let me tell you his interpretation, and I think I agree with him. And you mentioned that as well. You mentioned in your talk today, in your discussion. Lakshmi, the word itself means Laksha. It comes from Laksha. Laksha means goal.
Yes.
Okay, Lakshmi.
Yes.
Laksh means goal. In today's times, we have made wealth our goal. That is why we are associating, in today's Kali Yuga, we are associating Lakshmi only with wealth. But why don't we understand Lakshmi, as you mentioned, she is only at the feet of the Lord, of her Lord, and she wants to just serve her Lord. She's not, although she's associated with wealth, but she's associated with all sorts of wealth, whether it is health, okay, whether it's spiritual wealth, spiritual knowledge is spiritual wealth.
Yes.
We have, in today's times, we have only associated Lakshmi or Lakshya, means goal. Our goals are only focused on wealth. And that is why today we think Lakshmi is only about giving wealth, which is not.
Oh my goodness, that is so profound. I've often wondered about that because when you read anything to Lakshmi, if you read her the 1008 names, if you anything, it's more about the wealth of divine love, the focus that she has on her Lord, the devotion, how happy she makes Lord Vishnu.
Exactly.
None of it's about money.
Money.
I mean, it's a byproduct of her merit,
Correct.
of her punya, or it can be, but maybe someone's wealth is to be on the streets.
Yes.
So we don't understand what wealth is. We don't understand what beauty is.
Yeah.
We don't understand what service is. So that's very profound. Prashtravedi, have you had him on your channel?
Yeah, I've had him come on my channel and speak about these concepts. So
I'll have to watch.
Yeah, you can watch those.
I love that he addressed that.
Yeah, that exactly dovetails with what you had expressed, and that's why I thought I would add that element as well, because Lakshmi means Lakshya, means goal, and
Lakshya.
Yeah, so it is. If you look at Lakshmi, also there are Ashta Lakshmis.
Yes, the eight Lakshmis.
Eight Lakshmis, and out of that, only one is Dhana Lakshmi, which is wealth, literal wealth. Then you have the Dhairya Lakshmi, which is courage. Then different forms of Lakshmis, which is courage, which is gaining strength. Veera Lakshmi, Veera Lakshmi. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different forms. So Lakshmi is not only about wealth. So this is one thing that I wanted to share with everybody. Uttara Bhadrapada. That's why when you say women born in Uttara Bhadrapada with moon there, they become the Lakshmi of the house. Means they bring all round prosperity, because it is not about just wealth. It is all round prosperity. If there is no happiness, if there is no peace of mind in the family, then there is no use. So you need to have all of these elements. So that is very, very important concept of worshipping Lakshmi, is to bring this peace of mind, bring prosperity, bring happiness, bring content. You have to be content with whatever you have, right?
Yes.
This is the most important concepts that I needed.
Contentment is a great wealth.
Yes, and humility.
Yes, humility, because then you don't take more than what you need.
Yeah.
And we have an epidemic of taking.
Exactly. So
yes.
Yeah, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No. I was ready to listen, actually. I was wondering if you had more thoughts.
Yeah, I had more thoughts on, if you can go to the slide where Uttara Bhadrapada quickly. I'll give my final thoughts and then we can wrap up.
Is it this one?
No, this one. Yeah. The neem, as you mentioned, I think it's the next one. It's the neem.
Oh, I think it's maybe a delay on there. Okay,
yeah,
got it.
That's okay.
Yes,
So, yeah, this is the one. So the neem tree, when we were researching in our, with our people that we have in a group that we research on nakshatras. So somebody came up with an observation from our group. She said that neem trees were typically grown on arid environments because neem has a property to encapsulate the clouds, or not encapsulate, to probably capture the clouds, or kind of bring the clouds together so that there could be rainfall.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Okay.
So arid climates create that dense.
Yeah. So it attracts. It's like Lakshmi. Lakshmi is like a magnet which attracts things, and these neem trees are something like they attract the clouds. Right.
Oh,
there is a very strong attraction, or there is a strong force which the neem trees would bring the clouds together, and that is why neem trees were used for that. And you see the Shakti of this nakshatra is called as Varsha Dhyamana Shakti, the power to bring rainfall.
Yes.
And that association you can see with the tree is the neem in Uttara Bhadrapada.
Wow, that's so profound. Wow, so many plays of opposites. So, and once again, planting them in arid climates as to bring the rain. That's really amazing. Wow.
So
Yeah.
imagine if this is as though you're saying that was what I'm trying to explain is that is something which is physical. Imagine your life is arid. So you want to bring the rainfall to bring joy, happiness. Look how lively Mother Earth feels when the first rainfall comes. And the smell of the earth is divine. The first rainfall, if you've been here for a monsoon in India, when the
Yes.
first rain comes, the gases are released from Mother Earth, and that's so beautiful. It's
Yes, the
the
fragrance.
fragrance of Mother
Yeah.
Earth. So this is again trying to give you those sort of qualities. And another beautiful point which you mentioned is about the cow. Now, what I've seen with a cow is if you see anything in this world we associate with a cow, including the transit of planets, what our ancients saw this as a transit of the cow, and that is why we call them go chara.
Go chara. Yeah.
Go
The
chara
movement of
means
the
movement
cow.
of the cow, right? Go.
Right.
Then why would you call that a Milky Way? Again, we are
Yes.
trying, our universe is a Milky Way because this is again a reference to the cow. It's a milk bearing cow, which is so very, and these were beautiful messages that you gave with, how useful the cow is and what it does. There is no element in the cow which says, I do not like you, and they're
No.
always protective about things around them. So why should we actually, brutalize them or kill them? So this is, I think it is something which we need to really think on.
We need to think about it. It's not to vilify anyone or
No,
tell anyone that
or
they're
maybe,
wrong
yeah,
or judge them.
no.
But we, as a humanity, we need to reconsider our course of action because we're about to lose a lot more things than we realize. And
And this is beautiful, Eve. I'm very glad. And there was also a research which was being done, and I believe there was small dosage of poison fed to the cow. A milk-bearing cow, right? And what the scientists found out here in India, it's very surprising, the results, that they didn't find a trace of poison either in the milk or in the excreta of the cow.
wow. Oh yes, because of course the cow is antiseptic.
Yes.
Everything, yes, and so is the neem tree. That's so
Yes.
fascinating. I just realized that. So the cow patties are used for floors
Floors,
and actually antiseptic, and
antiseptic.
it has an earthy scent because all they
Yes.
do is eat of the earth. And
Yeah.
yeah, they're very sacred.
Very
It's
secret.
not a religious thing.
It's not a religious
Stop
thing. Exactly.
People need to stop thinking in this political, religious, even in this country, we've been told that environmentalism is a religion. And it's so sad because we're part of nature.
Yeah.
So how is it it just makes sense. And we're cutting ourselves off from our own power, from our own connection, from our own source of happiness, true
Absolutely.
fulfillment. And so we're just go on increasing this emptiness inside because you can never, no matter how many desires you fulfill, it's endless. I think all of us have experienced that at some point. If you're a kid and your parents give you infinite amount of sweets to eat, you're just going to wake up very sick in the morning.
Yes. That's right.
So needs to be controlled.
Absolutely.
And understood, and compassion.
So these are the qualities I think the Uttara Bhadrapada is teaching us. It's just like the mother. The mother would never pass on any sort of poison. The mother will keep the poison for itself, but it will only give, nourishing milk to its child, just like the cow. And the cow
Yes.
doesn't differentiate between, in the quality of the milk it gives on the basis of whether you're a good human being or a bad human being. It's just like the sunlight. The sun doesn't shine more on me or more on you because I'm a good person or I'm a bad person or somebody else is a good person. So it is universal. These are universal principles. And we are not talking about any religion here or any culture. You might, or we're not trying to indicate at anybody's food habits. It's just that we're trying to bring in or trying to show that, how useful this animal is, and there is no element of hatred or ego or anything. So why not we become like these animals, or the
Yes.
Mother Earth, or the sun, or the moon? These are laws.
There are teachers.
They
There
are
are
teachers.
teachers.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Look at the whole entire Rig Veda. The entire Rig Veda is elemental. Respect for the elements in various divine forms, and so we look at this as primitive. I had someone tell me that people were primitive for writing on clay tablets, but tell me who's primitive: the person who rips up trees and prints on paper and just wastes paper, or the person who fashions something out of clay? I mean, that lasts longer. It's not harmful. So who's really primitive? When you think about it that way, we're so removed. We've never had such an epidemic of depression, divorce, all these things. It's so severe in our cultures because in American culture, the best and the worst is bleeding over into everyone else because of our huge film industry and, other things. And so it's a big responsibility for this baby country. We're babies here. And you can see it by the way that most of us are introduced to yoga, or we're introduced to this. We think, oh, it's just to bend our bodies, And then if you go deeper, you see there's, that's just scratching like a really small part of the surface. So you get cultures like India. There's been such a perseverance of ancient knowledge. I'm not saying that every country you go to, you're going to have some problems because we're human and we're in a dark age. So, we're ascending, I think, according to some people, but that's a whole other story, but still we're at this thick layer of ignorance, but still somehow India has preserved. And I'm so curious, Dr. Arjun Bhaiji, because I, of course, can read Sanskrit. I can, especially in mantra form, that's, more of, and I can watch films in High Hindi because it has more Sanskrit content, so I'll understand it more. But I'm wondering about Tamil as well, because in Tamil, I know, different translations, like, for instance, and this is a whole other topic, so maybe we can get into that at some point, but I would love to learn Tamil so that I can understand some of the different translations, because from what I understand, they have different opinions even about Rahu and Ketu, like their exaltation points. There's just little subtleties. And I wonder, because Tamil Nadu, the whole area, was less exposed to the British.
That's right. Yeah. And a lot of knowledge still resides in Tamil scriptures, which are untapped. And Tamil has had a very rich heritage on its own, and many of those texts are lost. Most of the Nadi leaves that you see usually are written in Tamil, so those are written by the seers. So all this information, this knowledge is, we need to understand, we need to go and we need to understand those. I think that's a great thing. We need to learn Sanskrit, we need to learn Tamil to really understand Jyotish. But for anybody who's a beginner, I think today's lesson is a very important lesson. Why? Because you have given us enough clues and also guidance on how people can connect with nature. And if you have to know, and this is not my viewpoints, I've seen many great astrologers also say the same things. Like I've heard Ernest William say that, if you have to know Jyotish, if you want to study Jyotish, first try to be friends with nature. And nobody can understand Jyotish unless you can befriend and be, kind of be, protect nature and align yourself with nature. That is when Jyotish will come to you, because Jyotish is about studying about nature and the celestial objects. So
yes,
Eve, I think we had a brilliant session. I know I'm going to bring you on on this channel again for another discussion on nakshatras. But tell our viewers, how they can get in touch with you. Do you have a website? If they want to get a consultation from you, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have, you'll have to forgive me. I have been in hiding. I've been all word of mouth,
Sure.
referrals over the years, and I finally am getting up a website. It's eveofastrology.com. And then they can also, they're welcome to email Dean at eveofastrology@gmail.com. And I do have a 2-month waiting list to get on the books. And at your recommendation, actually, I am writing a book. So I am taking some time off for that, but I am still accepting, I am still accepting new people.
Okay, and that's something that I would love to read. Eve has been working on her book on nakshatras, and I am eagerly waiting to have the first copy, so that I would be selfish, but I would like to get the first copy, Eve, because I want to read them.
I promise. Yeah. I'd be honored. I'm so honored. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Eve, for coming today and sharing this knowledge with us. I'm very grateful that you've come, and such a lovely session on the Bhadrapadas today. Thank
you, Dr. Arjun Bhai. And I just want to, at the end, I'd love to bow to the knowledge within all of the viewers. And I bow to all of the students and teachers that have showed up with us here today, and honor their knowledge. And what I really hope, my real objective, is that it awoken something in their own inner knowing. Not that they're just learning from me running my mouth, but they actually took it into themselves and it ignited something in them. So I bow to that force within them. Yeah. And I really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eve, for this lovely session today. Grateful. Bye-bye.
Bye.